When my boss asked me to stay back after everyone had gone, I thought it was just another late-night task. I didn't expect it to change how I saw her forever. The office felt like a different world once everyone had gone. During the day it was all clattering keyboards, low-voiced calls, and the squeak of chairs rolling across the floor. Now, only the faint hum of the air conditioning and the occasional creak of the building's frame kept me company. My desk lamp cast a narrow cone of light over the papers I was sorting, leaving the rest of the room in a soft half-shadow. It was the kind of quiet that made you aware of your own heartbeat. I was finishing up a report I'd promised to have ready before morning. My phone lay face down beside the keyboard, screen dark, until a small vibration startled me. I turned it over and saw a message from her. "Everyone left early. Can you stay back a moment?" Just one line. No punctuation beyond the ellipsis. I stared at it longer than I needed to, feeling a faint tightening in my chest. She was my boss, yes, but also someone I'd always noticed in small, unspoken ways. The way she held herself in meetings, the way her voice could soften when she wanted you to really listen. At 42, she carried a grace that wasn't about youth but about presence. Still, she was a world apart from me. I'd never thought of her outside the fluorescent glow of the office until that text appeared. I wrote back a quick, "Of course," and set the phone down, suddenly aware of the stillness around me. The scent of warm paper and stale coffee clung to the air. In the corridor beyond, I could just make out the echo of her heels approaching, not hurried, not hesitant, but deliberate, each click a small announcement that the day wasn't over yet. I straightened my desk, trying to look busy even though there was no one to impress. My palms felt a little damp. I wiped them on my thighs. For some reason I thought of how she had smiled at me earlier in the week over a shared joke in the break room, a small, private flicker in the middle of routine. The door opened without a knock. She stepped inside, framed by the hallway light. Her jacket was folded over one arm, her hair slightly loosened as if the long day had finally caught up with her. She thanked me for staying, her voice lower than usual, carrying across the empty room like a warm current. In that moment the office no longer felt like the office. It felt like an in-between place, not work, not home, where two people who normally passed each other in structured roles might, for once, simply meet. I didn't know what she wanted to say yet, but the quiet and the closeness had already begun to change the air between us. She didn't walk straight to her chair the way she usually did at meetings. Instead, she paused at the edge of my desk, jacket still folded over her arm, as though unsure where to place it. In the daytime she always looked perfectly assembled, crisp suits, measured steps, an air of decisions already made. Now her posture was looser, almost unguarded. A few strands of hair had slipped from her twist and brushed her cheeks, catching the glow of my desk lamp. "Thank you for staying," she said again, quieter this time. "I know it's late." The words were ordinary, but the way she said them, voice lower, carrying a trace of fatigue, made them feel personal. I gestured to the empty chair beside my desk. "No problem. What do you need?" She didn't sit right away. She set her jacket across the back of the chair and ran her hand along the edge of my desk, fingertips grazing a stack of folders as if to steady herself. I noticed her nails, neat, understated, and the faint scent of her perfume drifting into the small pool of lamplight. "It's strange, isn't it?" she murmured, glancing around the deserted floor. "How this place feels completely different once everyone's gone." I nodded. "Like a stage after the audience leaves." That made her smile, a real one, small but unguarded. She finally lowered herself into the chair, turning slightly toward me rather than the computer screen. The movement brought her closer than we ever were in meetings. I could see the tiny lines of tiredness at the corners of her eyes, not as flaws but as signs of a long day lived with focus. "I wanted to talk," she said simply. "Not about work, exactly. About you. About how you're doing here." Her tone carried no judgment, only curiosity. It startled me more than any reprimand could have. I found myself telling her how I'd been balancing late-night projects and studying for certifications, how sometimes it felt like I was running in place. She listened without glancing at her phone or the clock. Every few seconds she'd tilt her head slightly, eyes steady on mine, as if trying to see past the words into the person speaking. When she replied, she shared pieces of her own story, her first years in the field, mistakes she'd made, mentors who'd helped. Each anecdote chipped away at the distance between boss and employee. She spoke not as someone above me but as someone who had been where I was. As she talked, the office seemed to shrink around us, our voices the only sound. The smell of paper and coffee was now mixed with the faint citrus of her perfume. When she handed me a document for reference, her fingers brushed mine. The touch was light, accidental maybe, but it sent a warm pulse up my arm. For the first time I saw her not just as my supervisor but as a person, complex, strong, and quietly vulnerable. And for a heartbeat, I wondered if she saw me the same way. For a moment neither of us spoke. The quiet of the empty office wrapped around us like a soft blanket. I had the strange sense that if anyone opened the door now, the spell would break, and we'd both slip back into our usual roles. But no one came. It was just her and me and the low hum of the air conditioning. She shifted in the chair so that she was angled more toward me, elbow resting lightly on the armrest, chin in her hand. The movement was casual, almost intimate, like something you do in a kitchen at home, not in an office at night. Her eyes met mine steadily. "Tell me," she said, "what do you want from all this? Not just the job title, the life you're trying to build." I hesitated, surprised by the question. Normally she asked for updates or deadlines. Now she was asking about my future. My throat felt dry. I'm still figuring that out, I admitted. I know I like the work. I want to be good at it. But sometimes I'm scared I'm just drifting. She nodded slowly, as though she knew that feeling well. I remember sitting right where you are, she said. Late nights, everyone gone, wondering if I'd chosen the right path. She gave a little laugh, low and warm, a sound that seemed to soften the room even more. I made a lot of mistakes back then. But I learned from them. That's the only way forward. I found myself leaning in slightly, elbows on my knees, listening not just to her words but to the cadence of her voice, calm, measured, yet touched with something personal. She told me about the first time she'd led a big project, how she'd nearly frozen during the presentation, how an older colleague had quietly coached her through it. As she spoke, her hands moved in small gestures, drawing shapes in the air, and her bracelet caught the light like a tiny star. I shared a few of my own stories. The project that had gone wrong last month, the late-night panic before my first big client call. Each confession seemed to make her eyes soften further. She wasn't judging, she was relating. The distance between us, usually filled with protocol and hierarchy, felt narrower, like we were sitting at the same side of a table rather than across from each other. When she slid a folder toward me, her fingers brushed mine again, deliberate or accidental I couldn't tell. The contact was barely there but enough to make my breath catch. She didn't pull away right away either. Her thumb rested on the edge of the folder, and for a heartbeat we both looked down at the same spot before letting go. The office air felt different now, warmer, more alive. The fluorescent lights above seemed softer, the shadows deeper. We weren't just exchanging career tips, we were letting each other see parts of ourselves we normally kept hidden. And somewhere inside me, a quiet awareness grew. This night was no longer just about work. After we'd been talking for what felt like hours, she glanced at her watch, and then toward the dimly lit break room at the end of the corridor. "We've both been here too long without a break," she said, rising from the chair. "Let me make us some tea." The way she phrased it, not an order, but an offer, made me stand up almost automatically and follow her. The hallway was hushed, carpet muffling our steps. Most of the lights had switched to their nighttime setting, leaving only a warm strip of glow guiding us. She walked ahead but not far. Her pace was slow, as though waiting for me. The faint scent of her perfume lingered in the space between us. Inside the break room the atmosphere changed again. The vending machine hummed softly, its pale light spilling across the counter like moonlight. She rolled up her sleeves a little, revealing slender wrists, and reached for the box of tea bags. "Chamomile okay?" she asked over her shoulder. I nodded. "Perfect." We moved around each other in the small space, quietly negotiating who would reach for mugs, who would fill the kettle. At one point she leaned across me for a spoon, her sleeve brushed against the back of my hand. The touch was so slight that we could have ignored it, but neither of us stepped back immediately. Instead, a small, nervous laugh escaped from both of us at the same time, a laugh that acknowledged the closeness without naming it. Steam began to rise from the kettle. She poured the hot water with a steadiness that contrasted with the tremor in my fingers as I held the mugs. The scent of chamomile drifted up, mixing with the citrus note of her perfume. It felt like the room had its own private weather, warm, fragrant, and slow. She handed me one of the mugs, her fingers brushing mine again, warmer this time from the heat of the cup. "Careful," she said softly. "It's hot." Her voice held a note of concern that was almost intimate. I felt the warmth travel from the ceramic into my palms and then up into my chest. We stood side by side at the counter, sipping slowly. The silence between us wasn't awkward anymore. It was a pause that felt chosen. Every so often our shoulders almost touched when we shifted our weight. She stared at the rising steam, her expression thoughtful. I caught myself wondering what she was thinking, whether she felt the same strange stillness I did. When she finally looked at me, her eyes were softer than I'd ever seen them. "You work hard," she said quietly. I noticed that. Simple words, but they landed gently, like a hand resting on my back. In that moment the break room, with its humming machine and faintly flickering light, felt less like an office space and more like a kitchen in the middle of the night, a place where two people could simply be human together. Back at my desk the mug sat cooling beside a pile of files. We hadn't spoken much on the walk back from the break room. The quiet had followed us like a third presence. The soft glow of the desk lamp now felt warmer, but also heavier, as if it were holding a secret we hadn't said out loud yet. She eased into the chair opposite me, tucking one leg under the other and folding her hands in her lap. For the first time that evening she didn't look at her phone or a document. She just looked at me, a steady, unreadable look that felt both reassuring and unsettling. I felt a small knot tighten in my stomach. "I probably shouldn't be keeping you this late," she said finally, almost to herself. "It's not exactly in the job description." "I don't mind," I answered quickly, then added more quietly, "I like talking with you." The words seemed to hang between us like a paper lantern. She glanced away, pressing her lips together in a thoughtful line. When she looked back, her eyes held a flicker of something, doubt? Curiosity? Before she masked it with a gentle smile. "I have to be careful," she murmured. "I'm in a position where people watch what I do. How I treat people." She paused, fingers tightening around each other until her knuckles blanched. "Sometimes it's lonely at the top, but there are reasons for the walls we build." Her honesty startled me. She wasn't lecturing, she was confiding. I sat forward, elbows on my knees, and said, "I respect you. I'd never want to cross a line or make things harder for you." Saying it aloud made my chest feel both lighter and heavier at once. She exhaled slowly, shoulders softening. "Thank you," she whispered. "That means more than you know." The clock on the wall ticked loudly in the pause that followed. She unfolded her hands, smoothing her skirt in a gesture that seemed to ground her. I could feel the weight of everything unsaid pressing in, the late hour, the empty floor, the invisible expectations surrounding us. I glanced at the cooling tea and then at her. She looked tired, but not in a way that invited pity. Rather, she looked like someone carrying a long day alone. A small, unspoken urge rose in me, to reach across the desk, to offer some kind of reassurance, but I stayed where I was. Instead, I met her eyes and held them. Her expression softened, a tiny tremor at the corner of her mouth, as if she was fighting back a different response. For a heartbeat it felt like we were standing on opposite sides of a thin sheet of glass, everything visible, nothing yet touched. And in that suspended moment, the quiet between us was no longer just quiet. It was a choice. The office had grown even quieter by the time we both finished our tea. Somewhere down the corridor the cleaning crew had passed, their faint voices echoing and then fading, leaving behind only the soft tick of the wall clock. The pools of lamplight on our desks felt like islands in a dark sea. She shifted slightly in her chair, elbows resting on her knees, fingers interlaced. The posture was so unlike her usual straight-backed composure that I almost didn't recognize her. When she spoke, her voice was low enough that I had to lean in to catch it. "Sometimes," she began, "I wonder what people think when they look at me. They see the title, the decisions, the polished version. But it's easy to forget there's a person under all of that." Her eyes stayed fixed on her clasped hands, as though she were afraid to meet mine. I didn't interrupt. The warmth of the tea still lingered in my palms, grounding me. She exhaled slowly. "It's a strange kind of loneliness," she said. "Being surrounded by people all day but rarely feeling known." Her words slid under my guard. I thought of the nights I'd stayed late, the way her office light glowed long after everyone had gone. "You're not invisible," I said quietly. "At least, not to me." She looked up at that, eyes searching my face for something. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why stay so late, take on more work than you have to?" I hesitated, then told the truth. "Because I believe in what we're doing." "Because you've made me believe in it. And because I notice how much you give." For a moment she didn't move. Then, slowly, she reached across the small stretch of desk and placed her hand on my forearm, not as a boss, not as a command, but as a gesture of simple human contact. Her palm was warm against the fabric of my sleeve, fingers light yet steady. "I didn't realize that mattered to someone," she said. The corners of her mouth lifted, but her eyes glistened. I turned my hand over so that her fingers rested in my palm. My thumb traced a small, absent-minded circle against her knuckles, not claiming, just steadying. "It does," I murmured. "It matters a lot." The clock ticked louder in the silence that followed, each second stretching like a heartbeat. She didn't pull away, and neither did I. We simply sat there, two people suspended between roles, sharing the quiet like a secret. Finally she drew a shaky breath, straightened slightly, and gave my hand a gentle squeeze before withdrawing it. "Thank you," she whispered. The words were simple, but they landed with the weight of something much larger, a confession not of love but of need, of recognition. When the last sip of tea was gone, and the folders neatly stacked, the office had the feeling of a stage after the curtain has fallen. Only the muted hum of the air conditioning and the steady tick of the clock remained. Outside the windows, the city glimmered with distant headlights and neon signs. She rose first, smoothing her skirt with a gesture that was half habit, half a way to collect herself. "It's late," she said quietly, glancing at me but not in the authoritative way she usually did. "We should go." I nodded, pushing my chair back. As we gathered our things, the silence felt different, no longer heavy but full of a strange, shared calm. We walked side by side down the dim corridor. The carpet muted our steps, and the smell of paper and cleaning products faded into the cool scent of night drifting in through a cracked window. At the elevator she paused, holding her jacket against her chest. For a heartbeat it felt like she might say something else, but instead she smiled, small and a little shy. "Thank you for staying," she murmured. "Not just tonight. For everything." I gave a quiet laugh. "I should be thanking you. You've taught me more than you realize." The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. We stepped inside together, the mirrored walls reflecting two people who, only a few hours earlier, had been simply boss and employee. The descent was slow. Her shoulder brushed mine as the lift moved, not by accident but because the small space left us nowhere else to stand. Neither of us shifted away. When the doors opened onto the lobby, the cool night air drifted in from the glass entrance. She hesitated again, then said, "Let me walk you to your car." It wasn't an order, it was an invitation. We pushed through the revolving door and out into the night. Outside, the city sounded softer, distant traffic, a hint of music from a nearby bar. The pavement was cool underfoot, the sky a deep indigo. We walked together toward the parking lot, our shoulders brushing now and then, each touch gentle and unspoken. At her car she stopped, turning to face me fully. In the glow of the streetlight her face looked younger, less guarded. "Tomorrow everything goes back to normal," she said softly. "But tonight, I'm glad we talked." I nodded. "Me too." For a moment neither of us moved. Then she reached out, touching my arm lightly, a gesture of both farewell and reassurance. I covered her hand with mine, gave it a small, steady squeeze, and let go. She opened her car door, still smiling that quiet smile. "Good night," she said. "Good night," I echoed, watching her drive away. The night air felt cooler now, but inside me there was a warmth that hadn't been there before, not a secret affair, but a quiet bond built on honesty, respect, and the possibility of something deeper someday. I walked to my own car with that warmth still in my chest, knowing that whatever came next, we had both stepped across a small, invisible distance, and for now, that was enough.